All right, thanks for joining us. I'm here with Chris Gropp, and you may have saw on our Facebook yesterday that we went and watched Sound of Freedom. This is a movie that is getting a lot of attention, a lot of interest. It's been sold out. I just did some research, and it's been sold out in a lot of places. They're actually scrambling to get more theaters, and as you can imagine, this is kind of a rare thing with movies these days. I went to the theater for the first time in so long, and our theater was packed, Chris. I mean, it was. We went online the
Yeah,
day before, and we were
yeah,
scrambling too. It was like we didn't even get seats next to each other. That's how busy
yeah.
it was. We were spread out all over the place, and because we got the last few seats, so our scene. I mean, we were at 3 p.m. matinee, you know, and so I was really surprised. This movie is kind of blowing up.
Yeah, and it took what we heard was it's taken like 5 years. Actually, it's
Right.
been ready for 5 years now, and they had to go through so many hurdles to get it actually into the theaters. The actor Jim Ca how
Yeah,
do we say his name?
I
Caviezel.
butcher his name too.
So he was saying, yeah, that he didn't go into details, but it's taken a long time to get it into theaters. And now here it is finally, and people are really wanting to see it and know more about it.
Yeah, so it's
So,
the movie's an action movie. So if people are wondering, it's about child trafficking. And to be honest, I had no idea what I was going in for. I thought actually before it even came, I thought maybe it was a bit of a documentary. I had a good friend of mine mention that we should check it out and possibly do a podcast on it because, and so that was kind of like, oh. And then I talked to Chris, and he's like, "Yeah, I already know about it. I want to see it." And so, I was totally kind of coming in, no idea what was going on. And uh, then now that I've watched it, it's an amazing action movie, fun. I mean, that's hard to say because it's also heart wrenching, but it's a fun action movie. So it's not like you're going to see some documentary with some raw footage. If people are wondering what this movie is, it's not. It's is it what you kind of thought it was going to be?
I did not. I really didn't know what to expect. But it is a story. I mean, it's really an action adventure story. The guy has to, Tim Ballard, the main character, he really has to get kind of down and dirty but it's a real life story. He really did it. They actually have clips. They have video footage from the actual busts
That's right.
in at the end of the movie, which is kind of amazing. That so the story is it's a true story. I mean, they have the video footage.
Yeah, he taught.
So
I saw an interview after his Jordan Peterson interview, and he was talking about how much they record everything, all their busts, all their stuff. They record it, and so yeah, they showed a little bit at the end of the movie. I mean, you don't see anything graphic. You just see a bunch of cops jumping off a boat and arresting some guys, and it's just kind of typical kind of surveillance, kind of some body cam footage or something like that. Uh, and there's also what's interesting about this movie is the story around this movie, which that's you just mentioned, which at the end of the movie, me and you were both really surprised. It took 5 years for them to bring this out, and so there's
mhm.
this kind of also this story within the story where a lot of people are talking about why did it take 5 years? This movie was done in the can, finished, ready to go 5 years ago,
Yeah,
and
it was ready to
you
release.
ready.
Ready to show. Yeah.
And 5 years later,
Mhm.
they actually were able to release it. Have you read anything or heard anything about why?
I haven't. No, no. I heard from you that it was somebody pulled out funding. They pulled out like one donor pulled out $3 million, and so the movie was produced by Angel Studios, which are probably a lot of people will be familiar with the series The Chosen about the life of Jesus Christ, which was produced by that same studio, along with a bunch of other shows that I haven't had a chance to watch. But most of their funding is crowdsourced. So, mostly they don't have to depend on a single big donor like that. But apparently that played a role. Yeah.
Yeah,
But beyond that, I don't really know. Yeah.
yeah. So I did a little digging. I went on TikTok and I typed in "sound of freedom" just to kind of see what people are saying about it. And I came across this one video where he was mentioning. I won't mention the studio. People will probably know who I'm talking about, but this big family production company, they had the rights to this movie. And I mean, this is what I heard from this guy. I don't know how, but people should research this. But what I heard is this big movie, this big family-friendly production company. They owned it. They had the rights, and basically, they were trying to sink it into the ground. That's what people are saying. That's what the criticism is, that they didn't want this to come to the surface, and so that was part of the struggle, was getting the rights back off this big company. And then after they got that, then they needed more money to get into distribution and stuff like that. And
Well, like
so,
you mean they owned the actual film that was created,
yeah,
or
they
they
yeah,
own like the screenplay or the story?
the movie. I mean, I think I don't. It's these kind of deals. These production companies. They're big. The big ones, the big Hollywood ones, and everyone knows probably which one I'm talking about. They had it. It was their movie, and I guess they were going to release it, or at least that's what they were saying they're going to do. And then they basically sat on it and sank it and tried to basically stop it. And
Wow.
so this is part of, that's why I'm saying there's a story within a story, that not only did this movie expose that uh, what child trafficking is for a lot of people like myself, and I think you mentioned too, we had no idea that this was going
Yeah.
on, and this is
Yeah.
bringing it to the surface for a lot of people. And uh, I mean, we'll get into some numbers here, but we're talking millions of kids every year. And so this is a
Yeah.
huge, huge operation. And we know Hollywood, the big studios, they're controlled by these entities that, they don't have a great history with, we got the Epstein Island thing. We have a lot of behind the scenes. You got a lot of problems in Hollywood with pedophiles and sex trafficking and these types of things around these type of industries. And so, I mean, people, I'm sure at this point, know the whole Jeffrey Epstein, what's going on there. It's got that kind of vibe to it where they did not want this movie to come out.
Yeah. That's that's really and the movie itself. So can we jump into a
Yeah,
little bit
let's
of a
sure.
bit more about the movie?
Yeah,
Yeah. So one of the things that stuck out to me was that, I mean, the obvious, you know, um, kind of subtext of the movie is that this guy, his Tim Ballard, he had to go rogue, basically. He had to kind of go out on his own to do these busts because, just quite simply, the FBI, um, and, you know, there's not really any international enforcement agency, um, but the FBI in particular didn't really want to enforce. I mean, they didn't want to do the thing that was gonna work to bust these child traffickers and to, really rescue a lot of children. So, he basically did it on his own, and he had to get funding from kind of a wealthy donor, kind of like, you know, just a basically he was a wealthy Colombian playboy who wanted to play cop, and he put up a lot of money for to finance the operation.
right.
So. like that's right there. You can see that the governments are they're not interested in solving the problem, really.
The fact that he had to go out on his own, you know, and basically quit his job. And I went into the interview today. All this stuff is all true, by the way. Like, it's based off a true story, and it's very heavily based off true story. It's not Hollywoodized much at all. I mean, I'm sure like the big kind of action sequences, they're kind of, Hollywood is, of course, these big fight scenes and stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you know, he did have to do these missions on his own. He did actually go to do these rogue things, and he did quit his job with the government 2 months before he got his pension, which he basically lost around $12 million to go rescue this kid after his accountant showed him the money. If you bail on your pension,
oh,
this is what you're going to lose. And so it's a pretty amazing story of what he's sacrificed. And that's something I kind of, the more details of going into it with this with the interviews. But in the movie, it's I thought, oh, this is a bit Hollywoodized, like he's gonna quit his job right before retiring, and that's like it's just kind of a standard kind of cop movie, right? Oh, he's got 2 days
yeah,
before he retires, and then he's going off this mission, right? It's almost kind of cliche at this point. So I was kind of like, oh, but that was true. I was like, wow, that's actually true too, where he actually
yeah,
bailed. So yeah, tremendous sacrifice with trying to get these traffickers.
yeah, yeah. And there's so many little details in the movie that are just really well done, um, to tell that story and kind of give a picture of lead into the bigger picture. The little story um, is a jumping off point to lead into kind of these like more like eternal truths.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, so it's kind of a timeless story. I mean, it's such a sad subject. Like, one of the comments that they made, that Jim, the actor, the main character, the main actor, said at the end was that this slavery, I mean, that's what we're really
yeah,
talking about.
right.
Yeah. It's bigger. There are more slaves now than there were when slavery was legal. Um, so wow.
It's hard to
You know,
believe. It's hard to imagine. We think,
yeah,
oh, God, it's so embarrassing. Like, God, back in the day, we used to have people in black bodies as slaves. It's kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe we did that, right? So that's kind of the attitude for a lot of people. We don't want to really bring it up. It's kind of like the whatever the skeletons in the
right,
Americans' closets, right? And there's been, of
right,
course, so many people know about it. And there's a bunch of movies. We're supposed to be way beyond that. We're supposed to have learned our lessons. We're supposed to be, and now it's worse than ever. There's more slaves than ever in America. There's America is not. That's the thing. That's the thing I was going to say. Most people think when they look at this problem, because for me, before I saw this movie and I thought child trafficking, I thought, oh yeah, there's all these probably third world countries, where they're just they're just trafficking all these kids, and they're just lawlessness. This is kind of my attitude, right? But now that I see that America's the number one middleman for slaves, like we're back. We're still doing
the
this, and
number
maybe we
one
never stopped.
consumer.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
the number one. I saw it today.
the
We're the
demand
number one middleman.
from
We
America.
we have we have there's more going through America basically than ever before, and
Yeah,
that to me is really staggering. That this is that no one's talking about the slaves in America. We've been.
right.
It's just
Yeah.
yeah. It's
The one
kids. One solution to this problem is what the movie's about, and that is going after these traffickers, catching them, stopping them, and of course that's needed. And what these guys are doing. But I saw this interview actually, I mentioned with Tim today, and he was saying that he's not actually doing missions anymore. One, because he's a famous celebrity, he can't really sneak into these countries. Everybody knows who he is. And
yeah,
another thing is that he actually sees uh, the another level higher to be able to stop this problem, and that is preventing and educating people so that they don't become pedophiles. And he
yeah,
sees it as like
mhm,
a social problem, like the fact that he brought up an interesting point of, okay, yes, it's terrible that there's 2 million a year kids being trafficked, but let's just stop for a second, and that means that there's a demand of
yeah,
millions and millions of pedophiles, and the increase of material on the internet. He said in the last 5 years it's gone up 500%. And you look at a lot of these percentages going way, way up. There's like an epidemic of pedophiles and child porn,
yeah,
and all these things is exploding, and we that is the problem, really. It's like, if you
yeah,
can't, I mean, that's, what I mean, like that's, what I mean, how that's the
yeah.
real, that's, if we
It
want to really,
starts
if we
with
want to think of the
the
problem, that's
with.
really the problem.
Hmm. I mean, I mean, pornography. That's basically where a pedophile gets like groomed, basically.
Right.
And like normal just isn't enough anymore.
Right.
Normal pornography.
If we can help people realize that it's a development. It's not that these pedophiles, have they're not born this way. It's not some small section of society that for some reason we don't really know. They're just kind of weirdos over there. We don't want to we have to, what I
Right.
mean. Like we gotta pull back the curtain
Or
here.
like
Otherwise,
the idea that it's genetic, that
right?
it's there may be some propensities there that are genetic, and there is there is some basis for that, but it also is going to be dependent on um, the 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 cultivation of consciousness that a person is undergoing in their life experiences. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
And that cultivation is what
yeah,
we're hoping that this talk we can talk about cultivation, and so anyone watching this, they can look at themselves, because this is where the real solution is, that everybody becomes aware that they're, by cultivating certain desires, by developing and cultivating, you are on a path to become a pedophile. There's this,
yeah,
you've decided. And if people don't understand this, and they think that, oh, it's not going to happen to me, it's not, that's not where I'm going to go. And yes, of course, pedophiles are in the way extreme direction. But
mhm,
that was another thing that Tim mentioned, and that is, he's because George Peterson asked him, what's surprising? And he said, you know what, when I meet these pedophiles, these people who have done unspeakable things, I've seen what they've done. They have the video footage because they've been recorded, and he sees what they've done, and he's just can't imagine this person doing this. And then the person walks in the room and he meets them, and they're just normal, regular people. He said that is always what shocks him the most. Because you think these guys are going to be like monsters, they're drooling and just kind of like animals, They're just regular, normal teachers, lawyers, professors, professionals, just like having conversation. And and, and he said it's just that's what shocks him every time. And so that's what we're saying here. We're not saying that these people, we're talking millions and millions of people are under this condition now, pedophiles. If there's this much content being consumed, There's obviously
Yeah.
millions of them over the world, and
Oh yeah.
they're developing this, and that's the point that Tim was also making, that there's a progression here. You can see how these guys are progressing, and some are further along the lines, but it all
Yeah.
starts with seeing through the senses, seeing through the eyes, hearing, and then eventually what they want to touch, they want to physically get involved. So it's so important that we recognize as a society how these things happen.
It's like reminds me of that Rolling Stones song, I can't get no satisfaction, but I try and I try and I try. And Russell Brand talked about that. He's talked about that issue quite a bit, and he's really a good example because he's taken it really to, just about as far as you can take it. He said, I was on drugs, the best drugs you can get, as much as I wanted. I was having sex as much as I wanted. I was adored by so many fans, really popular, and at the same time, I was suicidal. Um, and I think that's got to be a part of what's going on for pedophiles is that they're just thinking, what have I got to lose?
Yeah.
I mean, what's really the point? I mean, I'm going to die and I'm going to not exist anymore. So, there's not really any consequences.
We're not going to be happy by serving our senses, because we're spiritual beings. We need spiritual food. And if a kid hears that, they may not listen. They may go out and try it and realize themselves, or they may recognize that, oh, this is what they're talking about, and be able to step back from it and understand and be protected in that way. So the victims also, uh, they can be protected. Like, yeah, they've Instagram models, right? So many kids. I mean, I'm just shocked. I was just at the beach, and these girls look 12, and they have their bathing suits on, and they're just like taking photos of themselves,
Yeah.
and I mean, they weren't playing at the. I was like, these kids. I'm like, I mean, they look like they're supposed to be playing in the sand. Like they're supposed to be splashing around and having fun and building castles and jumping on waves, and they're sitting there trying to get the coolest photo. And you know, these, it's just that culture, and the it's like they're prime suspects, right? They're uh they're yeah, like the girl in the movie. They'll find different ways to lure you in. I had a friend who was a musician, and she was totally in the mode of goodness, making these wonderful songs about helping people. And then she got a record label, and they totally manipulated her, put her in skimpy clothing, get her to hang out with the right people. All of a sudden, now she's singing pop songs, and she was a very strong person. I thought if anybody wouldn't be influenced by this, they totally know how to move people. And if you don't
Yeah.
have that strength, you don't have that inner strength, that inner understanding, then you're a sitting duck.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to get the senses are so strong and impetuous that they forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. It's that strong. Um, and that was something. It was, the movie has some transcendental knowledge, but it's incomplete. Um, she's in the mode of goodness at the beginning. She gets taken up by the mode of passion. So yeah, she starts in the mode of goodness and she comes back to it by the end, but it's not quite transcendental because she's she could go into the after getting back to the mode of goodness, she could end up back in the mode of passion again and going through this whole
Right.
cycle again,
Right. Like,
which
what's our
is
real protection? Like, how do we protect
uh,
ourselves? We're mentioning these things about how dangerous it is, how our senses, and how even a person endeavoring to control them are still going to be tempted. So, what is real protection? And what we need to do is have an active process to associate with God. And the process we've been taught is to chant his names. And when we chant his names, then we're associating with him, and we get that taste that we're actually hankering for, that satisfaction that nothing else can replace. And on top of that, even you get this wonderful nectarian sweetness
Mhm.
internal.
So much
You're getting
pleasure.
pleasure. You're also getting purified of the contamination, of the that burning lust, the desire for all these things that a person, they maybe have indulged with in porn for years, and they feel like they they have no way out. It's just getting hard. It's just getting they're getting more and more and more sucked in. It's just like, that the river, they're stuck in like a raging river, and it's just getting ramping up, and they're getting turned around. They feel like you can
Yeah.
also get, as you chant, you are getting purified of that. So you're getting this tremendous relief where now your desires is there's an analogy once that, at first, the dog's in your house. Like lust is like the dog, and it's barking right at you and attacking you and right at you. And then as you start to chant, oh, now the dog's in the other room barking. Okay, it's not. You're a little bit separate, a little bit of relief. Then they're in the yard. All of a sudden, the more you engage in chanting, then now the dog's 50 acres away, and you hear burp, 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 burp. It's so wonderful. You don't The more you chant, the more you experience this, the further away these desires, the barking dogs of desires, can touch you, can harm you, can control you. The more you engage in it, you can't be lax. You can't be like, oh, well, my desires went away, and so now I don't have to chant anymore. No, you have to continually engage in the process, because you're continually engaging with your mind and your senses and all the sense objects coming in. We need a constant, it's like you don't just brush your teeth once a week, you brush them every day, because every day you have food in your mouth. Well, every day you have all this stuff in your mind. So you have to, every day you need to process, a daily process. Otherwise, there's no chance. You gotta, we're all in this river, this lust river. And chanting is like, we got a life raft. If we, we're able to rise up above, and it's going to help us. We can't, like, after we've done a little bit of paddling, be like, oh, easy, I'll just get rid of the raft and float down the river now. No, you have to continually. It's a continuous battle.
Yeah. Keep doing it. Yeah. And there's you can't keep putting trash in that
Right,
you've been cleaning out
right,
too.
right.
And
It,
for me, I was a smoker from when I was 17
oh, you smoked.
until I was 40 years old. It's a super tough addiction to quit.
Right.
There's a lot of clinical studies about it. It's as hard as like heroin.
Yeah.
Um, I tried like 7 or 8 times, couldn't do it. Started chanting. I got serious about chanting. I started associating with other people who were chanting and doing it rigorously as a process. It just disappeared.
Well, yeah.
I didn't even really think about it.
Right.
I didn't have to try.
Right.
I didn't have to try to quit. It just was gone by that point.
Right. And
So
probably impossible for a lot of people to
yeah,
fathom that
yeah,
these desires that are so strong just
yeah.
just kind of dissolve and go away. That's how powerful it is. And that's why it's so important that this message gets out, because there are people that are addicted to all these different things, and sex trafficking is the addiction to porn and having sex with children. And the you don't have to indulge. You can start
Right.
reversing the process. You can get out of this morass, of this this lifestyle that is destroying you, and of course all these people you're destroying. And you can get out, and we want you to get out. We hope that we're throwing you these lifelines, this information, and of course we hope we don't get to that point. And if you're on that path, please consider uh, starting this process of meditation, for your own good and for the good of all these children that
Yeah.
are just getting
If
destroyed.
you're on, if you're not even inclined towards that, if you're just inclined to, um, just play drums and be in the mode of goodness and be happy, why not add chanting to your
Right.
lifestyle? Because I mean, it's just gets better and better. It's not cyclical.